New York City, famously known as the city that never sleeps, is a dynamic metropolis teeming with life around the clock. Its skyline is an iconic blend of historic and modern architecture. We take you to New York, where young South Africans are making extraordinary contributions. We caught up with one of them, Mokena Makeka, an award-winning architect and globally recognized expert in urban design.
New York City, the city that never sleeps. A global metropolis where cultures collide and dreams are made. Among the millions of voices that fills its streets, there is a vibrant community of South Africans who have made the Big Apple their home.
I am the type of South African, I still feel like I belong and I want to give back to it.
I wanted to be part of showing the world what Africa can do.
South Africa will always have that pull and always be a home for me.
I miss the food. Even though we can try to make it here and I cook some pap, it's not the same as South African pap.
New York City is calling my name. It's a city where it's very busy. It keeps you on your toes.
People undermine you, and that's just what it is. It's the land of opportunity. The city never sleeps, as you can hear.
What does it mean to be a South African in a city that is so far removed from the familiar landscapes of Cape Town, Johannesburg, or Durban? What does it take to carve out a life in a city so different, yet so full of possibilities? I set out to speak to some South Africans who have made this city their home. The New York City skyline is one of the most recognizable in the world and a living testament to the evolution of architecture. And what better city to find yourself in if you're an architect yourself? Mokena Makeka is an award-winning architect and a globally recognized expert on urban design and strategy.
As a practicing architect, I've had the privilege of doing really amazing projects in South Africa. The country that I love and that has educated me and has given me so many opportunities, whether it's public infrastructure, playing a role with regards to the Institute of Architects, where I was the former president, acting as an advisor to the Minister of Housing and Human Settlements and being able to inform national policy. Now you come to a place like New York where, because of those values and let's call it attributes, you can arrive here, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you land here and now I'm now advising the mayor of New York on housing policy. It does. So in some ways you recalibrate to this different environment.
But despite this being a tough city to break through in his profession, Mokena is confident he will succeed. He currently holds the position of the Special Advisor to the Vice President of Academic Affairs of the Cooper Union, one of New York's leading schools of architecture, art and engineering.
I was not raised in a world where architecture was something that we knew as a course or a discipline or even a career. I remember drawing houses as a kid. I remember drawing cars as a kid. I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. That actually was my first passion. I stumbled upon architecture through a very vivid argument with somebody on a plane who basically dared me to study architecture, and I found this whole other world. Now, architecture I think is interesting because it marries both sides of my mind, the artistic mind and the technical mind. I love physics, I love maths. I love also the philosophy of quantum mechanics. I also love art. I love, and it's the one discipline where you bring all of these things together. And what I realized through that is a lot of the challenges that we have in South Africa, in terms of the legacy of apartheid, in terms of planning, spatial justice, economic opportunity, is intimately tied to, let's call it the pact that happened between spatial planners and the apartheid regime and even the colonial regime.
Mokena Makeka believes in the power of design in order to better people's lives. His guiding philosophy, he says, is enriching people through architectural, environmental, sustainable projects. Back home, he is well known for innovative designs specifically for his 2014 rebuild of the Cape Town main station.
Understanding the social impact of architecture has pretty much been my mission. So I love to design. I love design. But I was never into architecture for design's sake. I was into it because if you can make an incredible building in a township, if you can have an impact on public transport, if you can think about how a school can support a community and make it beautiful, that goes back to my point earlier about honoring the investment of the people who came before me. I know many people think of architecture as buildings. I see them as engines of progress.
While living in South Africa, Mokena designed many buildings, which he says has contributed significantly to the communities they were intended for.
I think a good architect and a good designer looks at the situation that's in front of them and in some ways maybe strips away their prejudices or strips away their let's call it their spreadsheet that says this is how it's done, and ask the question, what is required for this particular place? So you need to be curious, you need to be humble, you need to not think that the next building should look like your last one because you have a style that you have to maintain. You need to ask yourself, who is the community here and what is their most important need?
Now an academic, Mokena says his life in New York is just another stepping stone, a place for him to learn and then take that knowledge back home eventually.
I know that I don't know enough yet, so I needed to be in a place that was going to challenge me. I want to be honest about that. I had reached a certain comfort zone back home. I'd even say maybe even a bit of a ceiling in terms of what I was able to achieve, because in many respects, South Africa is a place of exceptional opportunity. But make no mistake, the apartheid barriers around capital still remain profound. As an architect, I found that I've done a lot of public work, but my ability to do private work is not the same. And it goes down to simply our histories. You know, private work sits in one capital bucket and state work sits in another bucket. I wanted to be part of showing the world what Africa can do. That's always been so important to me because changing narratives is so important.
New York demands that you adapt quickly or risk being left behind. It's a place of contradictions. It promises opportunity, but also demands a sacrifice. Some say it'll never really be home.
I miss seeing myself. Now, what I mean by that is New York is a place of anonymity. It's a place of over 800 languages, 8.5 million people, so you can disappear. When you're back home, you can't disappear. People know you, you see yourself. There's a recognition, whether you're going to a restaurant, whether you're out in the streets and so on. South Africa is a mirror of who you are. And whereas New York is not a mirror, New York is a tunnel. You go into it and you might come out at the other end as something different. So I miss hearing my language being spoken ordinarily. I miss being able to have trilingual conversations at a bar. So moving between English and Sesotho, reflexively. I miss my children. They're also in Johannesburg. I probably miss them the most. I mean, and it hurts to kind of feel like a migrant laborer sending remittances. I'm a modern miner in some respects.
Architecture, they say, is not just about a building, but creating a better, more sustainable future. Something Mokena Makeka says it's all about pushing the boundaries and marrying creativity with sustainability.